Hey, I'm just going to jump right in today and go for it. So I hope you guys are ready for this. But I'm going to lay all my cards on the table from the very beginning, so there's no question about where I want to end today and where I want to end next week, okay? So we're going to do a little 2-week kind of a mini series. And I want to talk about two things that I think that we all have in common. Okay, two areas in which I would say that we're all the same, which is the title that we gave to it. And then I'm going to point you to the next step that I think can address that very specifically, that you should consider stepping into a small group here within the church, okay? So that's the thing. That's not going to be a secret when we get there to the end. And we're going to do both of these 2 weeks from the book of Galatians, chapter 6. Now, you can find that if you open up to the middle, turn to the right, you'll come to Jesus. Keep going a little bit, Acts, Romans, Corinthians, and then you land on Galatians, okay? All right, so yesterday we spent a little time down at the beach and a couple hours, mid-morning, and it was actually a little intense yesterday. I thought it was actually extra warm, and I was like, all right, I'm getting the water a little bit and just kind of messing around, cooling off a little bit, and I got comfortable. Has this ever happened to anybody before? And before, it's like... Listen, I'm not new to the water. We've lived on the East Coast for, 25 years at this point. But I got comfortable and I turned around and I put my back to the ocean, and out of nowhere, I got hit by a wave. Has this ever happened to anybody before? And you're like, the next thing you know, you're doing a full somersault in the water and you're getting mixed up like you're in the spin cycle. And it's just dragging me along, and I'm just scraping the bottom of the ocean floor, and I come up out of there, my knee is all cut up from all the shells, my toe looks like it's about to fall off. Might be overly dramatic, I don't know, but it was everything's bleeding, and there's an audience of people who's standing on the shore like watching, like he must be on vacation. He's new. I'm not new. I just wasn't paying attention, okay? And you get hit from behind, and then it's like you got to recover. Okay, you got to man, I have a pocket full of shells right now that I didn't intend to collect. So I got to go back out in the water. I got to clean my hair out, got to empty my pockets, right? And all right, am I going to take my suit off out there? I know that's too much information, but things need to be addressed. And so I get it together. I come back up there. We're sitting for a while. My wife says, you want to take a walk? So we walk down the beach a little bit. And as we're coming back, I see these two older ladies who are in the same situation I was in, okay? And I watch one of them go down, and she looks like she's being flipped like a pancake, if you know what I mean. She's just rolling, and we saw things. And it's like, we're still seeing things. It's like... She couldn't get her balance, okay? She's just kind of sitting there, and then her friend is trying to help her up, and they're struggling, and I'm like, you know what? I think I should walk over there and help, so I take a step in that direction, but it's like they're embarrassed, clearly, and so then she gets her balance, and she stands up, and then she goes down again, and I'm standing over here watching the whole thing, and then the lifeguard comes running. I'm like, okay, somebody can actually address this whole thing right here, but I just want to tell you, and I think you guys will understand this, I'm standing here, and I'm looking at them 20 feet away, and it's like my heart is saying to that heart over there, hey, I know you're embarrassed. And you are probably cut and scraped, and you have a pocket full of shells that you didn't intend to collect. And guess what? Tomorrow, when you shower, like I just did today, you're going to keep finding shells in places that you couldn't locate yesterday, because there they are in the shower, okay? Everybody's with me? And I want to communicate, listen, the same thing just happened to me right down there a few minutes ago. And I feel like if she could have understood that she wasn't the only person on the beach that day who got hit unexpectedly by a wave and was laid out and was cut and bruised and bleeding and thinking everybody's looking at her, if she could have understood that the same thing just happened to me. I like to think I'm a little bit more athletic than her and a few years younger. It happened to me. Guess what? It could actually happen to absolutely anyone else. And I'm watching you struggle, and the whole time I'm thinking, yeah, me too. Or as we would say, same. You know what that's like, right? I mean, has anybody ever had the power of a shared experience? You know what that's like, what I'm talking about? Hey, a lot of us this week, we sent our kids back to school. Teachers, you're in the classroom, right? And there's this thing just about that kind of unites us in this shared experience. It could be that you attended a concert with some people. You were at a sporting event, right? You celebrated something with other people. You went on vacation together. And you felt united with those people because of the experience that you shared together. It can kind of go the other direction as well, right? Someone's going through a job transition. You moved to the neighborhood at the same time as other people moved to the neighborhood. You got kids the same age, right? You went through a divorce and you met someone who was also going through a divorce with a very similar situation. Hey, you rode out a hurricane or a tropical storm with some other people. Ever done that one before? And you're like, listen, we can never talk about this, but we're bonded now. You used the little 5-gallon thing together, okay, and in the garage, and you're like, man, the power of a shared experience. You experienced a loss together. You went through a tragedy, and now we have this bond, right, that has formed us because of the shared experience. Everybody understand that? What happens here, I think, is summarized well in this quote from author C.S. Lewis when he says, friendship is born at the moment when one man says to another, what, you too? I thought that no one but myself. And I love that quote so much. It's what's inspired these 2 weeks that we're jumping into, that when we find someone else who has gone through or is currently going through something we have also experienced, it's possible, right? The recipe is there to strike up a very special friendship. And I hope that I can lead us to understand that in at least 2 ways, okay, that we're the same. And that's what we're going to do this week and next week, right? Here they are. I keep fighting the same battles. Anybody else? And I keep carrying the same burdens. So that's where we're going to go, okay? And when you find some other people experiencing the same thing, I think a friendship can be formed. And I want to pause just for a second on the very front end, because I think there's a lot of us who probably roll in here week after week and we look around and we go, man, these people look like they have it together. You ever thought that before? It's like, man, these people got it together. Like they know what's happening in their life and they know Jesus, and I don't know if I actually really belong here. Like, what if the roof falls in? What if I'm set on fire? Like, I'm not sure I belong here, right? If they knew about me, right, or what I was going through or what I was struggling with, my secrets, you probably wouldn't want me here. And it can easily feel like we're the only one who's actually going through something, and we don't think about the fact that, again, I think we're all the same. So here we go. Galatians chapter 6. Let me just read it for us real quickly. Brothers and sisters, if someone's overtaken in any wrongdoing, you who are spiritual, restore such a person with a gentle spirit, watching out for yourselves so that you also won't be tempted. Now, that's what we're going to cover today, but I want you to read the full thought for you because we'll go here next week. Carry one another's burdens. In this way, you will fulfill the law of Christ. Hey, whatever they're carrying, help them carry it. Someone's struggling, maybe I should come along and help. For if anyone considers himself to be something when he is nothing, okay, this is a way of saying, look, you think you're something special. Well, guess what? You're not. You deceive yourself. Let each person examine his own work or himself, and then take pride in self and not compare self with someone else. Now, I think to properly understand this passage, okay, I think you need to understand everything that has actually been said and written before it. So let me just try to summarize this in 2 minutes for you and spare us doing a whole series on Galatians. Are we cool with that? All right, 2 minutes on what's happened up to this point, all right? These are words written by a guy named Paul, a follower of Jesus, to his friends in a church. What he has been saying up to this point is that the only way for someone to be connected back into a relationship with God the Father, the only way for you to actually be forgiven and what we might call saved, is by grace through our faith in what Jesus has done for us. We say something like that around here all the time, and the reason we do that is because the writers of the Bible say that all the time. In other words, there's no way that you could ever pay for the mistakes that you have made in your life or for the sins you have committed. That you can't just be a really good person. You can't actually be better than most other people. That's not what we're talking about. Nobody gets unsaved also at the same time. It's not like you made a mistake and you got kicked out of the family or sent to the end of the line. Because once God actually marks you, okay, and he brings you into his family, and again, we say this all the time around here as well. We actually spent all of last week on it. You got brought into the family, but that begins a lifelong process of transformation. And part of what has been written before we get to this point, okay, is if that's true, then things in your life should actually be changing. And Paul actually uses this illustration to say, like, your growth as a follower of Jesus should be like a tree, like a fruit tree, right? That the longer you're following Jesus and in his family, the more you should actually be growing, right? We're not really living like a member of the family if we're not growing. That seems to be what he's saying up to this point, okay? If you're not growing, then something's wrong. And he actually lays out two possibilities. Either you aren't actually saved to begin with and all this is just an act, or more likely there's something that's just preventing or hindering you from growing. Now, he says it might be something, and he goes through a long list of things. He says it might be something like sexuality, right? He actually throws in a whole bunch of things into this category, like a big junk drawer, right, of what your life might have been like back then, and then you met Jesus, and there's a better way going forward, but nothing's really changed in your life, okay? Or you don't want it to change, because if that's true, Paul says, then something's wrong. It's an indicator. He says it might be idolatry. It might be that you've taken something and you've elevated above Jesus as first place in your life. He goes, that might be an indicator that something needs to change. He throws in anger. He throws in jealousy, a whole bunch of other things that if they were to describe our life, right, those should be indicators that something might be wrong. Now, here's the deal that we all know is true, right? You might be a part of the family. You might be considered in the saved category, but sometimes we just miss it, don't we? We just get it wrong. We just do the wrong thing and we're not growing. And so this big encouragement, okay, of Paul to say we are saved by grace through our faith in Jesus alone. And when Jesus is in us, more and more Jesus should be coming out of us. Okay, that grace, Paul says, and then he sets it up. That grace that we received is never to be a permission for us to just stay the same. So jump back into what he said with that context, okay? Because there's a way, I think, that we can help one another become the people and the church God has for us. He says, brothers and sisters. Hey, the scriptures routinely use family language to talk about the church. He says, brothers and sisters. If, and I like the word in, someone is overtaken in any wrongdoing, you who are spiritual, restore them with a gentle spirit. Let's just kind of stop there for a second. He says, when you find someone in your life who is missing it, you say, okay, well, what do we really mean by that? He calls it wrongdoing. We might say it's those times where God says, hey, do this thing right here, and we don't do it. Or God says, don't do that, and we go, actually, I think I am going to do that. I'm going to make my own decision here. Those decisions, right, those mistakes, those sometimes what might be outright defiant choices or sins, like they always hurt us. They always cause a distance between ourselves and God, and more often than not, they hurt other people. At some point, right, we all fight those battles with wrongdoing. And my struggles are different than yours, and your struggles are different than theirs, but we all have those battles. Now, when it comes to fighting those battles, sometimes we're aware of them, aren't we? Like you might roll in here on a Sunday and in a moment of worship, or you're, driving in your car tomorrow when you go to work and it hits you and you go, you know what, man, I've really been missing it in my life right there. And you might have a moment where you actually go before God and say, God, man, I'm sorry. I failed. I've lived for less than best. And then you're back on your way, right? You're in a good place in a standing with God. But other times, we tend to prefer to keep those things like a secret. Let's just kind of keep it to ourselves. I don't really want anyone to know what's going on. Maybe you shared something with people in the past, and then you got burned by it, right? And you concluded it's really nobody else's business. If somebody actually knows this about me, right, they're going to abandon me, they're going to judge me. So maybe it's just better if it stays hidden, right? And I think one of our great weaknesses in the church, and I don't mean here particular, I mean like the church universal, is that we have this almost refusal to accept that every single one of us in the end are very deeply broken and flawed people. And so often then we just try to present to other people a version of ourselves that's a little bit more put together, but it's actually not real. And it feels right, doesn't it, to protect ourselves from rejection and from loss and from pain. So we end up just kind of staying on this merry-go-round of denial, I guess you would call it, and we wear 100 or 1,000 masks to disguise the true state of our life. And some of us will never find any true healing in our life because we're always hiding. Or sometimes we're just not growing, right? We're struggling with this wrongdoing and we're not even really aware of it. Like we don't really know that we're in danger, right? And so when we're absolutely missing it in our life, it keeps us from having the life that God has for us, right? Sometimes separates us from God, which is why it's absolutely crucial that we not only have some people around us who want the very best for us, but that we can be these people for someone else. He says, if someone's overtaken in any wrongdoing, you who are spiritual. Let's just simplify that because I'm guessing, 98% of us don't consider ourselves to be spiritual, right? We think that's for other people and we have an idea in mind of who that is. I just think it simply means, listen, you have Jesus inside of you. You're spiritual. Jesus in you. And you know someone is missing it in their life, he says, restore such a person with a gentle spirit. He says, restore that person, right? And restore them out of care and concern for them. You're not judging them. You're not condemning them. You're not alienating them. You're not devaluing them as a person. You're saying, I see something that you might not see. Hey, I notice something that you might not want to admit, and I'm saying something because I actually really care about you. Hey, you're not an expert in anybody else's weaknesses. That's not what he's saying. He's not saying you're holding people to your standards. That's not it either. The goal is not to punish, but to restore, he says, with a gentle spirit. Again, you're not blowing somebody up with the truth. You're not just going, man, things are terrible in your life, and I'm the one to tell you about it. You're not just dropping a truth grenade on somebody without approaching it with any kind of grace whatsoever. He says, you're not just going to show them, right? Which, by the way, I don't know if y'all are paying attention or keeping score, is the common perception of people who are outside of the church. This is the way they view Christians, right? And there are plenty of examples of this being done very poorly. The right approach, Paul lays out, is the belief that God loves this person and you do too. Hey, you're not angry at them. If anything, you are angry at the things that are destroying and harming them. But your desire here is all about restoration, right? To bring someone back into a place of freedom. And I'll throw this one in for free. I hope we all know there's a really big difference between the emails that are in my inbox right now from people I don't know or know very well telling me what I'm doing wrong, versus if the elders of our church sit down with me face to face, who care about me, who love me, who know my family, who want the very best for our church, and they say, hey, I have a question for you. Big difference, okay? Somebody, you're like, do you really have those? Yes, yeah, of course I do. So all this assumes, right, that you're in close enough connection to people that if you're missing it, right, if you're drifting a little bit, if you're hurting yourself or other people, someone can step in and in a spirit of gentleness just simply say something like, hey, I've noticed something. Is that right? Like, can we talk about that? Hey, you told me one time in the past, but now this is what I see. Or I know what you want to happen in your life, but that doesn't seem to be where you're headed. He says, if someone's overtaken in wrongdoing, restore them with a gentle spirit, and then he adds this, watching out for yourselves so that you also won't be tempted. And I think what he means by that is more about just to be careful that you don't approach someone in a spirit of self-righteousness. Don't approach somebody by thinking you have it all together, right? Because you might actually be on the other end of this situation before the day is over. Hey, don't get cocky and conceited and start thinking your crap doesn't stink, right? Just because, I think that's the Greek, just because you don't struggle with that one, okay? Just remember you have your own struggle or you are one bad decision away from having a battle on your hands. So look, when you see someone who is missing it out of care and concern, restore them in gentleness out of an awareness that you have your own stuff. Now, I think all this is so important and so needed for your benefit, right? Because your life, my life, right, my growth is really a team sport. It really is. Like every successful team has what we would call a locker room guy, right? You ever heard of that guy before? Like every team has this guy who's able to manage relationships kind of off the field, and he can motivate, right? He can counsel. He has his finger on the pulse of morale, and he will confront a teammate if necessary to the end of the greater goal of the team, right? He might say, hey man, I'm looking at your social media and it just doesn't really, it's divisive, man. It's not supporting the team. Hey, I don't see you putting in the work in the weight room. Or your diet and your conditioning are really not, up to par. Or, hey, I notice you're staying out way too late and you're not coming in the next day and giving your best. What that guy recognizes is that his teammate is not only hurting himself, those actions are not independent, right? That they're actually also hurting the team. In the church, we would say it this way: hey, you represent Jesus and I represent Jesus. We all represent Jesus, and therefore we're representing one another, and we represent all of the other churches in our community, state, country, and world. When I am missing it in my life, I'm not just hurting myself, I am hurting the entire family of God. And this goes for all the family members, right? Or followers of Jesus. Let's just think about all across our community, right? Oh, let's think about our country. So when I have a friend, okay, who lives 10 hours away, 5 states away, right? And he's making decisions to blow up his life, to blow up his family, and potentially his church. We don't just get to sit here and go, it doesn't really bother us. He's a family member. A family member. And what happens is there's this filter down effect that maybe y'all aren't paying attention to out there in the world, but you understand it when you see it, right? Which is why when you have a friend or a family member who doesn't want to have anything to do with church, or you invite them to come to a place like this, no matter how much you explain it and say, you know what, we're different than that, they have likely known a Christian or had a church experience where somebody blew it up, they got off the rails, they made a decision that didn't look like a decision a follower of Jesus should make, and then they lumped us all into the same category and said, that's how you're all the same. And you had to fight that battle to get that person to come to church as much as you say we're different. Listen, based on what Paul is saying right here, he seems to indicate without some other people in your life who care about you, there are some things that have the potential to destroy you and hurt us. But, that's the but side, right? With people who love you and care about you and who want the very best for you, you could actually be, and I'm going to say it this way, one good spiritual friend away from having a better life. Someone to say, okay, I will help you be a better version of you, and they can keep in mind, oh, by the way, same. Okay, every one of us, I think, probably one true spiritual friend away from the life we want. Someone who's looking out for us, right? Who can keep us out of the ditch, so to speak. Someone who can protect us and not let us get away with really stupid decisions. Somebody, I would like to say it this way, to protect our blind side. You know what we're talking about? I mean, football is kind of back. I don't think we count that game Thursday, but we're getting closer, right? There's a lot being written, by the way, hopeful expectations about our Jaguars. I don't know if you guys knew this or not, but there's a professional team down the road, the Jacksonville Jaguars. They got uniforms and everything. It's amazing. But I've been doing a lot of reading about the Jaguars, okay? Finished last season very strong finish, okay? Run into a team that no one was going to beat. Probably happen again this year, but they're expected to have a really good year. I mean, a lot of things to be optimistic about, right? We got a good quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, back, another season of experience. We've got new targets to throw to who are amazing, right? Calvin Ridley, expect to have a really big year. But we're a 10-win season, potentially, going to win the division. This is everything I'm reading. But you know what's not being said? And again, I'm just reading things from home and I'm analyzing things. I think there's potential question marks to ruin the whole season that have to do with the offensive line. I was reading the other day, okay, Cam Robinson, whose entire job description is to protect the blind side, is now suspended. And we got rookies and we got new players, and it's going to be a disaster. Listen, the blind side is this, if you're just kind of following. When Trevor Lawrence drops back, whether it's 3, 5, or 7 steps, I don't know, and he turns this way to look for these world-class receivers and options, he needs enough time to actually make a pass, not knowing what's behind him because he can't see in 360 degrees. He needs to know that there is somebody on his backside protecting him from the things that he cannot see. I don't want to be a downer here, okay? I'm going to root for them as long as the Chiefs aren't playing, okay? But he is one hit away from the Jags going from a winning season to a losing season. Now, I don't get paid to do sports. I just watch games sometimes. That's it. But I'm just telling you, that's my analysis right there, okay? That Trevor Lawrence, listen, if he doesn't have time to throw, if he's laying on the ground, if he's not alive, it doesn't matter how many good players are out there. Someone has to protect the blind side. That's my analogy. We're going to land it here in a second. You need someone, I need someone who has your blind side. Someone who can see what you cannot see, and they're willing to step in and actually protect you. Hey, they're going to fight with you because in the end, okay, we understand we're the same. So the question you shouldn't necessarily be asking is, okay, do I want that? Or why would I want that? Or isn't that just inviting problems into my life? I think the biggest question you should ask is, where would I actually find some people like that? So I want you to hear a story that we videoed 2 weeks ago, my friend Harry. And Harry's going to talk about how he has been fighting a battle for a long time and how some spiritual friends made all the difference. Check this out.
Hi, my name is Harry Williams, and I think that my wife Tony and I have been coming to Christ Church Community for, I think we're going on our second year. At the end of my college experience, I had a profound emptiness that was in my heart and my soul, and I didn't know what it was. And real quickly, walking down the street one day, I saw a poster on a telephone pole that said, "Come to our home fellowship," and it gave an address and a date. And I thought, well, I'm going to do that. The people read the Bible, and they seemed like they were connected, and they were happy, and they were a family, and those were all the things that I didn't have. And so at that point, back in June of 1976, I found the Lord and accepted Him as my Savior. After that, I had gotten married and started going to a traditional church. But over the years, kind of the requirements of life got in the way of my faith. And even though I went to church, I was not connected with my God, with my Lord, and I was just kind of going through the motions. And I also, during that time, was making all of my own decisions regarding my lifestyle, which led me into a life of battling addiction, specifically alcoholism. So I battled that for 40 years, trying to live two lives, the outside life that you put forward to people, and to make them think that you're just okay and everything's great in your family, and then the hidden secret life of an alcoholic. And I think that life is probably common to any addiction, whether it's drugs or gambling or sex or shopping, that we tend to isolate in our addiction. My disease was progressing, and when I retired, it really took over my life and was in control. And it was the God I was serving, and it was really the only thing I cared about. In 2017, I finally, after having tried for 11 years to get sober by myself, I finally gave up. And I said, Lord, I need help. And it was just a conversation that I had between my Lord and myself. And that's what got me to really begin to change my behavior and change my thinking and to seek Him more fully through church and my faith. After that, I began to get involved in my church more actively, and I was going to AA, and that is a very close community that's supportive of and helps a lot of people. It doesn't give you really the faith aspect of what we look for in our relationship with the Lord, but it is a community of support that helps a lot of people. So community is really very key to my recovery today, and it will be going forward. And it's where I find great joy in living every day and serving the Lord. Another aspect of groups that would have helped me earlier is the fact that they also have eyes on you. they can, other people that know you and can see, have insight into your life, can see when you're kind of, going off the mark in terms of your walk with the Lord, or if you're in situations that are dangerous, or if you're about to make harmful decisions. Sometimes, we talk ourselves into things that we think are very good ideas, and in fact are not. And we need people who know us to be able to, kind of raise a red flag and bring it to our attention that maybe our best thinking isn't really the right thinking. And, frankly, I would only look to people that knew me well to take that kind of advice, and that I knew that cared for me and loved me. And so that's a benefit that is a big benefit from being a member of a group and really getting involved and emotionally connected with those people. But I think that if you do participate in a group and you do open up and share, you'll find a lot of support. You'll also find a lot of commonality. I can think of many times when in group discussions where somebody expresses a concern about a problem that they are having, and others in the group will say, oh, I went through that, or I'm going through that now. And you really find out that you're not alone in the issues that you're dealing with. And that people in a group that have been through them can really help guide you through those difficult times, give you support, give you hope and confidence that you will be able to work through whatever the issue is, because there's very few things in life that someone else hasn't experienced also.
Yeah. I love a lot of things about that. I really love that he threw shopping into the addictions. Anybody else? Which just kind of highlights the fact that we all the same, right? And I love one of the biggest things that he mentioned there too is that one of the things that kept Harry from finding friendship within the church sometimes is this belief that no one's going to understand, or that no one will, accept us for what we've done or experienced. So I just want to take a couple of minutes, and I want to propose that you can find some people like that here in the church. And I don't think this is a guarantee by any means, but I want to throw out what I think is your best option, okay, to have a shot at this, and it's in a small group. So if you have the app, or you are going to be downloading the app later, when you go to that tab on the far right that says More, it will give you an option to go to Groups, and under Groups, you'll find every group listed that we're getting ready to launch in 2 weeks, okay? And I just want to explain a couple of things to you on what they are, what you're looking at. We offer very limited numbers of types of groups because we think it actually gets a greater return. So you're only going to see 3 options in there. If you are exploring faith, or you are new to faith, or you are new to Christ Church, I would encourage you to step into a group called Rooted, okay? You'll see all those listed there. Rooted's awesome, I think, because it combines the practices of daily reading, weekly group discussion, and then some larger group experiences throughout the course of the meeting time, okay? You're going to do all things like learning about God, big categories, right? Prayer, serving, finding your mission, and in the process, you're learning to form some really good spiritual habits. Then you will see message-based groups, okay, where you get to study, discuss, and apply the teaching from Sundays. All right, you get a short video. Your group usually watches that together. We provide you all the discussion questions. And I think message-based groups are amazing. This right here is one-way communication. For 30 minutes or so, I'm just saying whatever I want to say, and you don't get the opportunity. I mean, every once in a while, someone will raise a hand or ask a question, and it gets a little awkward. But you don't get a lot of opportunity to reply. So in a group like this one, you get some time to talk it over. You can say, I think he's ridiculous. You can say, this was really helpful, and figure out your next steps. The other group you'll see in there is called Life's Healing Choices. And this is a very specific, and we don't offer all the time, kind of a group, all right? Where you say, okay, I have some real hurts that I have accumulated from the past, or I have some habits that I really need help with, right? You're going to get great content in that group, but you're going to get connected to a whole bunch of people who are sitting around going, you know what? Same, me too. Got that one. So all of the groups, all right, start on August the 20th, and every group that you signed up for lasts for 10 weeks, okay? Start doing this a couple of years ago where we would run a teaching series for 10 weeks so that everybody, regardless of what kind of group you're in, can be in group for the same amount of time, okay? So everything starts the week of August 20th, which means I'll start a new teaching series that day, and I'm going to be teaching through the book of Acts. We're going to talk about the mission that God gave the church that was unstoppable from the very beginning, that you and I continue to be a part of to this very day. So let me mention one more thing. It's not a group, it is a point of connection, and it is specific to men. But there is a breakfast coming up this Saturday. It's happening here in the building over in Connection Point. Again, if you go to the app, go over to More, go up to Events, you can sign up for that. Catered breakfast, I've seen the menu, it looks amazing. Small fee, I think. Don't worry about it if you can't cover it. It's just a point for you to come and connect with some other guys in the church and realize, oh, there's some other guys around here that maybe look like me and we have some things to talk about. That's it. No big step out of there. All right, everyone has their stuff. Maybe we can agree on that. I think it's one of the things that makes us the same. But let me ask it this way, differently, and we'll wrap up, okay? How could your life be different, okay, if someone had done this kind of thing for you in the past? Okay, when you think back over your life, what if someone had done this for your dad? They said, hey, man, I'm concerned about some things that I see. Or they had done this for your wife, right? What if someone had approached you in the past and said, okay, man, it seems like you're isolating. It seems like you're making some decisions that are unusual. I really care about you. What if someone had done this for you 6 months ago, 6 years ago? I don't know how far back it would go, and approached you and said, you know what, man, I'm looking out for you. I love you. I care enough to say this, and I'm going to offer a helping hand. It probably, from person to person across the board, would have saved us a lot of time, maybe some money, some hurt, some blown up relationships, and a lot of pain. So the question is this: how could your life be different now if you opened yourself up to spiritual friendship? Because listen, you're always going to be fighting battles in your life to live in good and right and true and best ways as we follow Jesus. That's what makes us the same, right? The only thing that could potentially make us different is that some of us will actually benefit from spiritual friendship and some of us won't. And it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way, right? So I'm praying, okay? I was praying coming into the message that all of us would step into a relationship with other people so that we could all be our best. And then you know what happens? The church is its best. So, number of ways to respond like every week. Jared's going to lead us through worship. You can sit, reflect, pray, however that is, solidify some decisions. If you're a follower of Jesus, you might choose to take communion, which is in the back of the seat in front of you, representing the body and the blood of Jesus, and you might just have a moment doing that. We baptized somebody in the first service. That was amazing. Maybe your decision today is a step of faith. I don't know. But if so, you can walk back to the corner back there. We'd love to walk you through that. Let me pray for us this morning. God, thank you for these words. And while a really difficult challenge, God, I pray that we just embrace this one today and realize that we are not unique in the fact that we all struggle. And it might be different than everybody else, God, but it's the thing that we all have in common. So today, God, I pray that we would just kind of drop those excuses and those defenses and maybe just open ourselves up to the idea that we really could be the best version of ourselves. We could have some spiritual fruit in our life if we just opened ourselves up to spiritual friendship. So God, I would pray today that encourage, we might take steps in that direction today. And we're going to pray all these things in the name of Jesus. Amen.